All right, let's get started. So first thing, do we have a volunteer to take notes? If not, we can just write things as they come up. It's no problem. Any new faces today? I think I've seen everybody here before. So we'll move on to release planning and updates.
I can give a quick update for the life cycle. I think we've been hinting for a while now that we're getting close to releasing. But I think some of the features that we're targeting for the next release are shifting a little bit. So we're still working on it, is what I can say right now.
Awesome. Do we have anybody from the platform side here? Seems like no. Any updates from other sub-teams, distribution or learning?
Yeah, just a heads up, distribution will probably have a fake release of GitHub Actions to test our automation in the next week or so. So it'll be a point release with nothing in it.
All right. Unless there are any other release planning updates, the first thing on the agenda is pre and post build packs. The links to the group additions to Builders RFC.
Are we skipping RFC review in working groups now?
I don't know. It wasn't on the agenda, so I assume so. Is that right? Is
I
it
feel
gonna?
like that's what we said at some point. I don't know if today was the day it was meant to happen. Sounds good.
I think we were planning on skipping because we're going to do it in the core subteam sync, which we said was going to start next week.
So do you want me to do it?
Yeah. If you wouldn't mind.
All right. No problem. Give me 1 second to share my screen. Everybody see that? All right. First thing is RFC officially supported utility build packs. Any updates on this, Joe?
Not really. I think there were some suggestions to add more specifics around what like the requirements or criteria for accepting a utility build pack were. So I think I'll definitely add that. Otherwise, yeah, just maybe some general discussion when we're ready.
Sounds good. Next one is our dynamic base image generation. I think I responded to most feedback here. I guess there's some new comments from Joe. I'll definitely take a look at that. Cool. Support Docker files. It's also mine, kind of along with this track of things around stacks. I think I got to most feedback in here. Also, this one needs more detail. I know there are definitely some open questions or things I said I'd add that I haven't gone and added yet from the discussion here. I think there was some interesting, pushback along the lines of like, if we're not doing stack packs, it doesn't add, like build packs can install operating system packages. So, when are we going to do that? But I think that was expected. And then remove stacks and mixins. I think I've responded to most of the comments here also. Please let me know if there's anything else. I guess Jesse, I missed your comment here. I'll take a look at those again. For all three of these, you know, they're missing some detail, and I'll go back and add more things. But if any, or like, feel free to review or treat them like real RFCs. I think there's enough in there that, at least for the remove stacks and mixins, we could probably get consensus. Next one is looks like a dependency bump. Issue generation. It's not an RFC. It's for another RFC. Remove shell specific logic. Emily, any updates here?
I feel like I've answered most of the questions here, so I'm curious about what the outstanding sticking points are, I guess, or I think it's ready for a re-review.
There was the, I guess, signal comment that came out at BAT that I think is the last comment that
I might not have seen this one.
it's all the way at the bottom. That I don't think it's like a blocker thing, but it's probably a good thing to call out, like that is a change of stuff that Buildpack authors have to take into account in their direct processes. I mean, that's always been true for direct processes, but now everyone's defaulting into it, right? So
Yeah. Is that something that we want to see sort of captured as a call out here?
yeah, I think so.
Cool. I can add that.
Like that we're accepting this complexity because that is a change, I think, for Buildpack authors.
Sounds good.
Anything else on shell specific logic? Support for structured bomb format. I think this was upgraded out of a draft recently. Any updates on this week, Sam?
It's ready for review. I think addressed most of the things here. Is there, apart from like the outstanding like other RFCs that this also needs, which may coincide with some of the new stack pack alternatives. So there's a list on the top. But apart from these three open issues, I think this RFC is pretty much I think it's ready for review for everyone.
Awesome. Excited to see this one move along, especially. Unless there's anything else on that, add a proposal for shared layers directory.
We wanted to ice this, I think, put it in the draft state until use cases are raised that need it. I'll put that as a comment.
Cool. I think this is something that we've been talking about, like also stopping work on the asset packages RFC or reconsidering some things there. There's a bunch of things around caching. This kind of feels like related to caching that maybe kind of want to take a step back and think of a more unified model before we end up with 5 different ways to cache things. So maybe this is something that could be accounted for as part of that effort. Next thing is make build layers read only for subsequent build packs.
That's also waiting for reviews. I think I addressed most of the comments.
Got it. Awesome. And last thing is organize, combine and organize metadata file locations across lifecycle. I think Jesse, you took this over, is that right?
Yeah, I think there are some comments. I left some files out, but still waiting on some other reviews to come in, and then I'll work on all the feedback. But most of it's just some files that need to be listed on there, I think. And there was one suggestion for a folder name.
Awesome. Yeah, I did some bike shedding in there. All right. Anything else? I think that's it. Stop sharing and I'll move on to the first thing on the agenda after that, which is pre and post build packs.
I suggested that we add this to the agenda because during review of the pre and post build pack spec, an issue came up sort of around how all these features fit together and override each other. So if in a project TOML you have pre and post build packs, but you also have an order, how do folks expect that to behave? And then if you're overriding the order on with pack CLI, do we expect that to override pre and post build packs or not override pre and post build packs? It seemed like a discussion that'd be good for the broader group because we could solicit input on the UX in terms of what people would expect or what they have use cases for. My Stradog proposal was that we should accept both pre and post build packs and order in Project TOML, and they should get combined just like they would if there was no order. And then the overrides on the pack CLI, if we're adding pre and post build pack flags as well as our normal order flags, we should explicitly just override that part. So if you're passing -- build packs in a way that overrides order, you just override the order and you still get your pre and post build packs. If you pass in a pre-build pack, you're overriding the pre-build packs, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's still some weirdness there, but in my mind, that feels the most predictable. In terms of that, if I was just reading those flag names and field names, that's how I would guess that it works. I know some other folks thought that was a little bit weird to still get a combined version of the flags and the Project TOML order. Does anyone want to argue for the other point of view here?
I mean, I think the original thing that came up was if you control the complete build pack order, why would you use pre and post? It's kind of use case. There's an open question of, for me, like, you can't have pre and post in builder today. Do we want that? Do we want this just to be a non kind of builder level config that users can control? Is it obvious to users that if I use -b, that pre and post would still run? When traditionally, I think before this feature, -b basically takes over the entire build pack list. So that is a change in behavior to some degree.
I think so. For the builder, we have the intention of a pre and post like thing, but we don't know what that is going to look like yet. So I think we kind of have to imagine what we'd want there. Like, in some sense, I like the sort of orthogonality of like having just pre and post is like this thing, and it works in the builder and it works in the project TOML, but then using the same keys or names or for that thing opens up all these questions about how they work together. I think what Emily described is fine with me, but it's also very like, not like House of Cards, but like it's this fragile thing. Like if you take one thing out of it, it starts to not make sense. So like having pre and post and an order in the project toml makes sense to me if the use case where I want to use -b and still have pre and post run is a valid use case. And I think it probably is. I could totally see like pre and post utility build packs in your project toml. And then in CI, you run one build pack, but then locally you're like, -b my debug build pack or something like that. And you still want the pre and post to run. So I think that's probably valid. And I think that is sufficient to require that they work together in the project toml, even though I was kind of against that to begin with.
But I feel like the debugger is probably a utility type build pack, and that's where it kind of gets confusing. Like,
Oh, no, I meant
you
more
actually
like,
don't want to override the like things that
no, I meant more like,
it.
yeah, no, but I meant more like, I'm building a Ruby app and then I have some problem locally, or I'm doing something special locally, or I have like some development thing locally. And so I just have like Ruby-dev build pack where I kind of instrumented it or something along those lines. Just kind of went and tweaked something and I'm just running that build pack locally, but I still want all my pre and post stuff to run. I guess another possibility, I don't like this one, is platforms that don't support the build pack group, but would support pre and post. That kind of grosses me out, but I'm curious if like that's a thing that might be a thing for KPack or other platforms.
Sam has his hand raised as well.
Yeah, I think the other question I had around this was like, we also have these other RFCs for removing shell specific logic and replacing that with some default build packs. And once you introduce these default build packs, which would run pre and post, and then you also have pre and post, and then you have group editions, gets very confusing. And like, although right now, since we've gone through these RFCs, it might make sense for a new user. That would be really confusing, like what all of these random flags are and like how they interplay with each other.
Yeah, I share similar concerns that Sam has, especially with the utility build pack RFC and how that, not that we shouldn't do the utility build pack RFC, but it definitely adds a lot more, I think, interesting color to pre and post, especially with builder, of like how you want to do it. Because I think as a user, I wouldn't want it to be at the same level. I think you were mentioning this, Joe, with like the keys and stuff. Like, I wouldn't expect my pre and post to necessarily override what is in the builder, right? But that seems to be how we're treating it with pack CLI, with the thing that Emily mentioned, which makes sense, like that it would work that way. But it's definitely, I feel like we've been trying hard with some of these recent RCs to, I think, move in the opposite direction of complexity. And I feel like we're adding a much higher mental tax, I think, potentially moving in that direction.
Yeah, maybe it would help. So like, we're talking about something that's very abstract and doesn't have like a concrete proposal. So like the utility build pack, or I can't remember the name of the RFC that I have open right now, actually doesn't address this, right? Like that RFC is really just about like, should the project take on some build packs, and doesn't say how they're going to be used. So like, I just haven't had time, but I was going to write another RFC for that mechanism, whether it's pre and post and builder or whatever. So maybe what we should do is say the pre and post or group additions RFC is finalized, but before we finish speccing it out and certainly implementing it, we would finalize this default build pack mechanism RFC, because it potentially like that RFC ends up not being a pre and post and builder, and we ship them with lifecycle. That's definitely an option that would make this more complicated, or maybe resolve some of the problems. I don't know. So maybe that's how we should go forward.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I almost wonder, it just makes it a lot simpler if pre and post just aren't in builder, because then you don't run into those complications independent of like the your RFCs. It's just like, do we keep this as a user level feature only?
I feel like there's a fork in the road, like trying to figure out which conversation we want to be having. It's like, I feel like if we're going to do the RFC as written right now, we should decide how the things that are in there, how we deal with edge cases that we didn't elaborate on in the RFC, right? But I think there's another conversation that sounds like what this has turned into, which is the, should we pause this because we think that we see other complications in the near future and we would like to resolve them before we add this complexity.
I think the other thing is, like, apart from Pack, I don't see any other platform currently using those flags. Like, this seems like a very interactive use case. If you're like doing this in production, ideally you would just want to define a proper order rather than, at least that's my
Oh,
assumption.
no, I think so. I think the predominant use case is in Project Toml, and like this came from people asking. Basically, this replaces the from builder thing, which people use already, right? Where it's like, I want to supplement the build packs that are auto detected, and I don't want to specify an order. And so actually, like, the pre and post on pack was just a like, oh well, we might as well do this to match or override what's in Project Toml. But the main use case is like, I have some kind of utility build pack, and I don't want to disrupt the groups and orders in the builder.
Would it make sense to just have like a single groups table where you could add any arbitrary number of build packs, and if you want to reference the builder, you can, like similar to how pack has from builder, you could just put it there. That way you don't have to deal with pre and post.
I mean, that's what the group additions RFC was about. We could revisit that. And I still think that there's like, I still think there's another mechanism besides pre and post that is more like override this specific build pack with my own build pack. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a whole can of worms. You know, like it could get really hairy if you're trying to like insert into the middle of the group or something like that. Which was, I think that's what came out of that RFC was like, I'd originally had pre and post, and then I had some other, I'd proposed some other mechanism where it was like in like after, it was before and after, where you could like target a build pack ID and say run before that. And we ended up nixing it because it was really hairy. So I'm not against some mechanism like that, or like overriding a build pack, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, rather than overriding a build pack, I was just saying like you have like the entire like group that you want to run as a single list, and within that list you can either put an individual build pack ID, which only that would be run, or you could put like the entire, like you could reference all of the build packs in the builder there. So it's pre and post technically, but you get rid of the like issues where you have both pre, post, and group editions defined. So it's just one single thing. And
You're essentially, you just want to alias the builder build packs in the group
yeah,
list. That's what you're suggesting, Sam, right?
yeah.
I have a slightly dumb question. Does from builder still exist in the back CLI? I thought it did at one point, but it's not sort of like in the help text.
Yeah, I think it's still in there. And then there's some build packs out there that recommend using it, and it feels really hacky. And I think that's why we either need to have whatever the mechanism is, like what Sam described is fine. But I think we'd have to like RFC that and have it supersede the existing RFC. I think we just need to, like, instead of having like a from builder hack, we just need some kind of official like spec mechanism for this, so that exactly for all the reasons we're describing, like how does it interplay with this other thing, and if we want to add this to the builder. I just want to make sure that all that stuff is, that we have a way to make it crystal clear. So
yeah, I mean, a nuance here also is that builder is an extension spec that hasn't released yet, but this would then also only be an extension feature, whereas I think pre-post is not dependent on anything related to Builder, which I think is to some degree why we want to just work regardless if they specify the group list or not in Project Hall. I guess what are next steps? Sounds like, I don't know if there's much more discussion, but how do we drive towards?
I mean, like, I think
on this?
the thing that makes sense, I think, is to figure out the other part of default build packs, at least a proposal, so that we can weigh this all together. I'm a little concerned. Like, the reason I initially created the group additions RFC was that From Builder started popping up in like the Astana build packs documentation and stuff like that. And so it was like, oh man, we need to nip this in the bud, or we're gonna have to support it. So right, like, I haven't seen that happen again, other than I think the two use cases, like there's like Google's docs say it, and then Astana build packs say it. I haven't seen it come up in any other place, but I do worry like the longer we kind of punt on this, the more permanent the status quo becomes. So, but it does feel like we need to sort out some of these other details, or we can just accept that there is no default build packs yet, and we just come up with a decision on some of these finer points, like the pack args. So to be clear, my proposal is to have the new RFC for default build packs and hold the spec changes until that. So unless someone disagrees.
Sounds like a path forward. Let's do it.
Next topic, I think.
I added this item about a more structured working group. I think the crux of the idea being that we schedule topics ahead of time and time box them, just to give time to, or an opportunity for people to be prepared, and time to cover a variety of topics. So I don't think we need to really hash it out here, but I just, it's a plug for that PR. Please add your thoughts, and that's all.
Sounds like a good idea, Natalie. Thank you for getting everyone to take a look. I think Stephen might have given up facilitating on us.
Sorry, I was
Take
looking
us to the next topic.
I think this is also yours, Natalie.
No, actually, it's mine.
Oh, it's yours.
Yeah. So again, we don't need to talk about it here, but I would love to get your opinions about the discussions on the discussion that I created about the difference between the working group and the office hours, because I feel, and from what I heard from others, they're also having the same feeling, that the working group and office hours start to become like the same meeting. So please share your thoughts over there so we can make it better.
does moving towards a structured working group with an agenda in any way address this? It's like the difference is working group is the topics we said we're going to go over.
Yeah,
And office hours is whatever anyone wants to talk about.
I added a reference to Nali's PR in my discussion. It's kind of relate to each other, but we used to have like 2 working group sessions, and we changed one of them to be an office hours, which is supposed to be a bit different. But in the last few weeks, it looks like it become like another working group session. So again, if we want to do it like this, it's fine. We just need to decide whether it's the best idea.
I think like it seems like people want about 2 hours of FaceTime to talk about, whatever things per week, as opposed to an hour. Or when we suggested, do we need 2 meetings a week? Could we go down to less? I think the feedback was it's still helpful to have time to communicate synchronously. Be great to add more structure though. But I wonder if people's thoughts have changed about how much time we need.
Yeah, it's also like something that we can discuss in as part of this GitHub discussion. Maybe we should cancel one of the meetings. I'm not sure this is what we should do. But again, we can open it here. I mean, it looks like people want to talk about it here. We can talk about it here, but I personally think it's better if everyone can share their thoughts in one GitHub discussion, and we can maybe next week or the week after decide on a better structure for these 2 meetings.
All right. So no more questions about that. Pausing asset packages.
Wanted to bring up with this group the idea that we would hold off on implementing asset packages, either merging changes into the spec or into pack in the lifecycle. The motivation behind this is that there's been a bunch of use cases related to caching, including like I created a writable asset cache RFC that is still in draft. Sam has the shared layers RFC, and we have this asset packages RFC that we've already approved. I think each one of these RFCs introduces some amount of complexity, and they're all solving slightly different but very related problems in different ways. And I think there's a feeling from all of these discussions that we have, having 3 separate complicated things that are all kind of caching in the end, like creates an ecosystem that's confusing for users. And that we should unify these things more in a way that would make sense. Like no one of them by themselves seems to be too complicated, but all of them together are confusing. And therefore, instead of doing this one now, especially given that it's probably not the use case that seems to be impacting end users the most, we should hold and wait for a more cohesive caching story. That is my proposal, and I'd love to hear thoughts from this group so that we can decide whether to officially hold or to go forward.
I mean, and just for the record, this is not where we're making that exact decision, but it's healthy to have that discussion here.
Nobody has anything to say. I'm going to assume you all agree with me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good thought along with all the caching stuff. I do think asset packaging is slightly different in the nuance that it is like pre-work that is done ahead of time, Whereas I feel like all the other two proposals that have come in from you and Sam happened during build, even though, like you said, they're all related to caching and kind of reducing build time. I think the asset packaging also has potentially runtime launch layer like implications potentially too, right? Of like deduplicating.
It
layers
doesn't
in the design.
actually. It's only about the layer design of builder images.
There's also nothing currently preventing any Buildpack author from creating such an API, right? Like Packet already does this. There's no limitation within the API right now that prevents asset packages. It's just making it official, right?
Yeah, I think the big difference is, so right now, we say a build pack is a single layer. So you include your vendor assets in the layer, in your build pack layer. And this would be about creating a schema for assets to have their own layer, which allows for some deduplication on the registry and some efficiencies there. So if you have many versions of a build pack, but they all share one large asset, the registry can dedupe that blob. And while I do eventually want to get that efficiency, I'm not sure that efficiency is our most burning problem right now. So if solving that problem makes it harder for us to solve other problems, then I would like to wait.
Also remember that something came up about the number of layers you could put in a builder when you introduce this asset thing, and then the solution was like pack or something would just like squash the layers together. So I also wonder, like,
Yeah, we don't have a
what-
solution for that at all. It's like as soon, this isn't really usable if you have a large builder anyways.
I guess for me, where on the priority list for us is solving caching, quote unquote, the caching problem.
I'm starting to feel like it's high personally. But I can't speak for everyone's priorities. And the reason I feel like it's high is because the users I interact with complain a lot about it.
To me, it's one of those things where we're trying to reduce complexity before we say something is 1.0, whatever that thing is. And you know, some of that stuff is removing terms. Some of that stuff is more, you know, ways to use other tools with the project, like Docker files. And I think some of that stuff is just improving places where we've built stuff on top of stuff into more, you know, unified APIs like the caching situation. So all of that for me, I feel like is high priority because, you know, it's stuff that we're probably going to hold off on, you know, longer term stability until we reach. I don't know if everybody agrees with that though.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know how close this is on the horizon. It's also fine to put this on hold and not do it. And I just remember how long we put kind of Daniel through kind of the ringer for asset packaging. I feel like this RFC was like months long to kind of put this stuff through. But we seem to be having this renaissance of basically revoking many RFCs that we've kind of been putting through the ringer. So
I wonder if there's something to extract from that. It's like if something is introducing enough complexity that it takes 6 months to go through all the ifs, what, buts about it, then it's very complex. And sometimes that's worth
just
it.
give Stevens RFCs some time. I think it'll, I mean, I think look at the comments on some of those. I don't think they're a hole in one, right? So like, I don't think
No,
that's a fair
no.
criteria,
I'm
right?
not saying if it takes a long time, we shouldn't do it. I'm saying if it takes a long time, it's probably because it's complex. And therefore, that
So we
is a
shouldn't
data
solve complex
point.
problems.
No, sometimes we should, but we should figure
Mm.
out whether the benefits we're getting are worth the complexity we're adding. And
I feel like that's the hard part there though, right? Like that is the part that ends up taking so long, is like, you know, is it really valuable to users and stuff like that? And then people having different opinions of that and trying to, you know, reconcile what the most important things are. Like the technical parts of it, we can work through, but I don't know. I feel like you're saying we shouldn't do complex things ever.
that's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
I hear a lot from people who are trying to use the project. Like there's a proposal right now to add Buildpack support into Knative. And I've been talking to Knative folks about the project. Well, something I hear a lot is there's a lot of terms. They're very confusing. It's really hard to understand how, you know, it's like, it's actually not hard to make a build pack, but there's this large amount of context and you know, in some ways complexity you have to understand kind of as a prerequisite to feeling comfortable writing a build pack or kind of understanding the project. And so that's made me feel really nervous about adding more things before we look at each of those things where people have said, this is a term that is not used anywhere else in the world except for in the project, and it means something that already exists, right? Or, you know, this is an API that you came up with, but there's this other API over here that already exists, like for bill of materials format, right? Or, you know, yeah. So to me, it's less about complexity and implementation and more about the complexity we're exposing to end users. I think that's what's gotten to a point that's made me feel like, oh, we should slow down.
Yep. No, I 100% agree with that. And I think the funny thing is reducing complexity for users often means increasing complexity for your own operational burden. You know, the simple is hard, right? And so I think that's why I was pushing back on what Emily was saying. It's like, sometimes the complexity that we take on, like things that are, you know, this is sort of against some of the proposals, but like taking on complexity in the life cycle might mean that people don't have to learn about pre and post build packs in the builder, right? Like if we may be able to make decisions where it's like, yeah, this is a lot harder for us to support and maintain, but the end result is less complexity outward facing. So that's why I think it's,
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with that. If there are places where we can really legitimately hide complexity without exposing it to users, and that, you know, it doesn't create, you know, a broken abstraction where you really need to know about it. It's, you know, in just certain cases, right? Then you know, I don't have a problem with it adding that. But a lot of the places where you have complexity right now are, as a build pack author, you need to maybe know about like 4 types of caching, soon 5 types of caching. You know, if we keep going on that track, as a stack pack author, you need to know about 7 different contexts where your stack pack can execute, and a different API for the rules for what, you know, stack pack is supposed to do. You know, like with that proposal, I feel like it hasn't been the case that we've added features, or like the features we've added that hide complexity are not that, you know, adequately, are not the features I'm worried about right now.
I think a lot of the examples we come up with are ones where we're exposing new domain concepts to users, right? Like we do most of what's in asset packages without introducing a new type of artifact called an asset package. But I think that's sort of an example of the sprawl that touches users. I think that also touches on our like pre and post build pack conversation in some ways too, right? Like now, I think part of the hesitation that I've been hearing from people is that now users have to understand pre and post build packs and how they fit in with this order concept. It's like more top level concepts that people have to understand.
That's fair, but in that case, there's an existing from builder thing. And like, so it's not like there is a thing, and that the purpose of that proposal was to address user feedback stuff that's in Google's and Astana's docs, right? So just I do think like it's sort of a good example, but it's also a little bit different in that it's addressing something that exists and trying to actually reduce the complexity and formalize it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can make that, I think, a similar argument about asset packaging too, right? Like the cat was right doing it in the wild, and so people have had to take on the complexity of figuring out how to do this versus standardizing it. I feel like in the past we've also talked about progressive complexity of like, yes, there may be X ways to do caching, but when you're writing Buildpacks, you don't need to learn all X of them to get a Buildpack working. And so I wonder, there's that many truths to all the things people have said, but I wonder, is it just we are forcing people to have to learn all these things to do it, even though we say that we want to have progressive complexity, like packaging and building is a complex problem, and building abstractions around it to do the things we want is complex, right? So there is going to be this level of complexity, and how do we hit that right balance, I guess, of giving people enough power, but also having the right abstractions, but also not forcing them to have to rebuild everything from scratch. I feel like are kind of the things we're trying to find a balance with, right?
I think in this case, we haven't quite hit the mark. Like, I think we should provide an abstraction that lets people create build packs with vendored assets easily. I think introducing a whole separate asset package concept that you now need to know the location of, and it doesn't even get combined with your build pack unless you reference it in the builder. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I think is like might address everyone's need under the sun. Like, I think we ended up there because maybe there's a couple special cases where you don't actually want to put them in the build pack. But I wonder if by trying to address every need, we made something that's like a little too convoluted.
I'm not sure how we wrap this one up, but I would like to get onto the project descriptor discussion if we have a few minutes. Can we try to, I don't know what to suggest, but to table this or finalize it or whatever.
Well, I don't think we should finalize things in verbal form.
Yeah.
So this is never that form of it. I think Emily was bringing this up as a discussion, and then we have action items, I think, between the two of us to make this a more official thing.
I'm hearing mostly theoretical objections rather than personal objections to not shipping asset packages right now. So I think I could go ahead and propose something formal, and we can move on.
All right, next thing is project descriptor.
I'm not sure who added this, but I'll start talking about it because I do have concerns. So we've done RFCs for the changes to project descriptor that are going into 0.2, and I think from my side, eager to get those implemented. Like for inline build packs, I have a PR that's I think like almost 3 months old now. And it's something that solves real problems. I know the changes to the namespace are important to some folks. So I'd like to figure out whether we're going to ship 0.2 or what.
What subteam is project descriptor?
It's an extension, so I'm not sure if we.
I think we're talking about the spec here. So it's the core team, right?
Yep.
Although be
Yeah,
implemented by the platform team.
Yeah, that's how it stands.
Yeah. I know I don't know what forms you've brought this up, Emily, but you mentioned concerns about migration and support within, I guess, like platform operators having to support multiple project descriptors despite it being an extension, and something about a TOML to TOML utility. So I just kind of wanted to get this out of, I think that's come up in leadership, but like something more transparent and open and more in the public, but also just to have a path forward and a potential path to a plan of record of how we can move forward.
Yeah, last I understood where the discussion was at, we were saying we would just break everyone this time, but we wanted better path forwards for the next one. But if we wanted to hold on a path forward, I can try to put something out in the world in written format around ideas there.
Right. Well, I think that presumes that we have an intention of like making massive breaking changes in 0.3. And at least from where I sit, I don't have anything in mind for a 0.3. So
I mean, maybe
it feels weird to
if we
hold.
pull that out.
Yeah, we could pull pre-post out. That's fine. And that wouldn't, we could introduce that in another version that's not doesn't break anything necessarily.
I think even for non-breaking changes, sometimes like we might need a strategy for how users can expect Project TOML to affect different platforms, right? And how we'd like to implement this in a sustainable way. Okay. Sure, my big concern here in some ways is like, so we're about to release this big breaking spec change, and like PAC will be prepared to handle both formats, but there are older platforms. So like if an app updates their Project TOML, like the support that was added in KPAC for Project TOMLs, all of a sudden it's going to break, stuff like that. But we've approved these RFCs, and if no one else is concerned about this, like I'm leery of saying everyone wait on me to make another big long running proposal, because it seems like that is not a time frame that folks are comfortable doing this in, right? Like,
well, there's basically like, if when this releases out, there'll be potentially 2 versions. So like KPAC will continue to support 0.1 that already is out, right? So
it's more about like
assuming
an
you're deploying
app, right? Like you can't use the same app in both platforms in that case. I mean, you could have a Project TOML with a slightly different name, and I guess PAC accepts a flag there.
I mean, PAC can support both 0.1 and 0.2 though, right?
Yeah, but it's
That's
about,
an extension.
I feel like there's an idea that the same app could be built by multiple platforms. It's like we have a bunch of Paketo sample apps, right? And some of them have project descriptors. I don't think we'd want to change those schemas even when the new schema comes out, because we'd like,
Is it, I mean,
yeah, stuff like that.
is it just that KPAC should not be doing this? I feel like the spec is a spec. It has been the spec, and it exists because PAC users needed these things. And I feel like what we're stuck up against is KPAC wants to do this weird thing, which is like support half of it. And now, like I just feel like it should just have a different thing. Like
if the answer is PAC users want to do these things, then it shouldn't be a spec. It should be a PAC feature like Builder TOML. And I feel like other platforms have very similar problems.
Well, and that's why I've wanted to either push it out into its own like library, like the image util or something like that, and even potentially the prepare phase, could parse it, turn it into some intermediary format where that lifecycle could read that instead. But I wouldn't say it's just PAC, right? Like PAC has become the foundation for many platforms, including our Jenkins integration, Circle CI. I forget the other one I was going to go to was, but like
If all of those
At the end of the
integrations
day,
are
like-
using pack, though, it can still be a pack feature. It doesn't need to be a spec feature.
But I think the way our users see it is as just an ecosystem, right? And it's like, I put this project toml in here and something's either going to honor it or not.
We're at time and I have to go to another thing. But I'm not committed to blocking this. Because I feel like I'm committed to
we-
blocking enough other things.
I think we should definitely
I just
pull
feel like it's
pre-post
gonna
out
be
of this,
weird.
right?
Yeah.
I think
I'm-
that we can agree on.
I'm also worried about the project descriptor. Maybe it'd be good to schedule a follow-up thing.
I would also.
Yeah,
just-
yeah, dedicated. I think it's like, I mean, this thing exists because it was, one of the most frequent asks from users was, I need to put MVARs and build packs, and they still want process types. We hear that pretty often. So
I think I at least agree with the need for a project descriptor that covers almost all of these things. I would like it to be more portable across, or like very portable across everything that supports build packs. But there are a lot of details that I'm worried about, if that makes sense. So like, I think people are pretty aligned. It's just
I feel like if the answer is it's not portable, then it's not working. If it's not portable across platforms, then it's not fulfilling its promise.
but you can't, I feel like it's really unfair to be like, well, our platform decided to do this weird thing, so it's not portable. Like if this was just about Builder, which I think is one of the more difficult things in terms of portability, we could split that discussion out. But when it comes to like MVARs, it's like, there's no reason that can't be portable. So
But there are other things
don't
in
know.
there that are not portable, right? Or
Let's,
we're not
Are
thinking
there?
about how it's portable
Like what?
and then breaking changes in a single file in the app that should be able to run on multiple platforms makes it sort of inherently not portable.
I think if there are concerns that KPAC is doing something weird that is specific to KPAC that you wouldn't run into if you're just making generic case controllers to build Buildpack apps, then no, I lean towards like, it's maybe something that we don't need to worry about as much, but I want to make sure that those things are really, if those things exist where we're uncomfortable because of the KPAC specific thing, that we know that that's, we say, okay, we're going to do it anyways, and it's because it is really truly a specific thing in that context and not a general issue with building apps on Kates, right? For instance.
Yeah, I guess the reason I don't tend to think it's specific to KPAC sometimes is because we're trying really hard to do everything in the spec in a super generic way on Kates. I feel like many of these limitations are also hard on other platforms like other Kates-based platforms, or even in a like half Kates-based platform like Tecton.
I have similar concerns for Tecton too. And I know Canadian is going to use the Tecton integration, for instance, where they're talking about that.
should we find time? I don't think we're gonna wrap this up in the next 30 seconds. People are late for other meetings. Should we find time? Do we have time later today? Should I schedule something next week?
yeah, I'd like to push this forward. I mean, like I said, I've got a PR that's 3 months old. All the RFCs were resolved. Like, it's kind of frustrating that we're just sitting on it because we're uncomfortable or something. Like, we should try and move this forward.
Office hours later today.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Okay, let's at least do it there or schedule it there. Thanks.